What's good, everyone? This is Monaro and welcome to my channel. Today we will cover chapters 7 through 12. I hope you enjoy. As they wait in Riverlands' great hall, Catelyn watches her son Robb restlessly adjust his new forged crown several times and remarks to herself that a crown is not easy to wear, especially for a boy of 15 years. The ancient crown of the Kings of Winter was lost 3 centuries ago when Tormund Stark submitted to Aegon the Conqueror, but the smiths have done well to match the descriptions. An open circlet of hammered bronze surmounted by 9 black iron spikes in the shape of long swords. There is no gold or silver or gems. Bronze and iron are the metal of winter, dark and strong. As the guards bring in the captive, Robb lays his sword across his knees in the customary gesture of hostility. As Sir Cleos Frey is forced to his knees, Catelyn reflects that he does not look like a Lannister. Although his mother, Lady Jenna, is sister to Lord Tywin Lannister, Sir Cleos has inherited the stringy brown locks, weak chin, and thin face of his father, Sir Aemon Frey. Robb's sword glimmers faintly as he bids Sir Cleos to rise, but it is Grey Wind who frightens the knight. As big as any elk hound, Robb's direwolf sniffs at Sir Cleos, who was captured in the Whispering Wood where Grey Wind killed 6 men. Sir Cleos scrambles to his feet and away from the direwolf so quickly that it provokes laughter from the audience. Sir Cleos thanks Robb, calling him "my lord," but Greatjon Umbers corrects that a king is styled "your grace." Sir Cleos accepts the correction, and Catelyn notes that he truly is more Frey than Lannister. They would have never gotten such an honorific out of Jaime Lannister. Robb wishes Sir Cleos to be his envoy to Queen Cersei in King's Landing. Robb reminds Sir Cleos that he considers him a Lannister, not a Frey, since he sided with the Lannisters in the Whispering Wood. He therefore expects Sir Cleos to return with the Queen's reply and resume his captivity. Sir Cleos vows on his knighthood to do so, and asks what the message is. Robb offers to make peace if his terms are met. At the back of the hall, Lord Rickard Stark shoves through a rank of guards and out the door, but Robb pays no attention. Exchanging his sword for a parchment, Robb reads his term. First, the Queen must release my sisters and provide them with transport by sea from King's Landing to White Harbor. It is to be understood that Sansa's betrothal to Joffrey Baratheon is at an end. When I receive word from my castellan that my sisters have returned unharmed to Winterfell, I will release the Queen's cousin, the Squire Willem Lannister, and your brother Theon Frey, and give them safe escort to Casterly Rock or wheresoever she desires them delivered. Secondly, my Lord Father's bones will be returned to us, so he may rest beside his brother and sister in the crypts beneath Winterfell, as he would have wished. The remains of the men of his household guard who died in his service at King's Landing must also be returned. Third, my father's great sword Ice will be delivered to my hand here at Riverrun. Fourth, the Queen will command her father, Lord Tywin, to release those knights and lords bannermen of mine that he took captive in the Battle of the Green Fork of the Trident. Once he does so, I shall release my own captives taken in the Whispering Wood and the Battle of the Camps, save Jaime Lannister alone, who will remain my hostage for his father's good behavior. Lastly, King Joffrey and the Queen Regent must renounce all claims to dominion over the North. Henceforth, we are no part of their realm, but a free and independent kingdom as of old. Our domain shall include all the Stark lands north of the Neck, and in addition the lands watered by the River Trident and its vassal streams bounded by the Golden Tooth to the west of the Mountains of the Moon in the east. After a cheer from the Greatjon, Robb states he will provide a map of the new borders. He declares that Lord Tywin must cease his raids and withdraw. King Joffrey must rescind all claims to Robb's lands and subjects, and the Lannisters must deliver 10 highborn hostages as a pledge of peace. Robb promises to release 2 hostages every year so long as the pact is honored, but if it is not, he will give Queen Cersei another Whispering Wood. To emphasize his point, Robb whistles and Grey Wind comes forward and snarls. The Greatjon raises another chair and Grey Wind howls. When Sir Cleos agrees, Robb orders him to depart with Sir Ryben Ryger at first light and dismisses the assembly. Out in the gallery, Catelyn compliments her son's performance, but notes that the theatrics with Grey Wind befit a boy more than a king. Robb only smiles and asks if she saw Sir Cleos's face. Catelyn replies that what she saw was Rickard Karstark storming out. Robb admits he saw it as well. Catelyn's brother Edmure Tully comments that others may agree with Lord Rickard and asks how they can talk of peace while the Lannisters are still pillaging the Riverlands. He urges Robb to march on Lord Tywin at Harrenhal, but Robb insists he does not have the strength. Edmure points out that they only grow weaker sitting here. Catelyn snaps that it was Edmure's idea to permit the river lords to depart for their own lands. Edmure argues that he cannot command his lords to remain idle while their crops are burnt and their people killed, but it would be an ill thing if a Northman like Lord Rickard left them. Robb agrees to speak with Lord Rickard, but he cannot blame the man for loathing peace with his son's killers. Catelyn points out that more bloodshed will not bring back the dead. She suggests a wiser man might have offered sweeter terms, but Robb declares that sweeter terms would have gagged him. Catelyn realizes that her son wants vengeance as much as Lord Rickard. Catelyn points out that Cersei will never trade Sansa and Arya for a pair of cousins when what she wants is her brother Jaime. Robb explains that his bannermen will never allow him to release the Kingslayer even if he wanted to. Catelyn says the lords made Robb their king, but Robb replies that they can unmake him just as easy. Catelyn argues that the safe return of the girls is worth Robb's crown, fearing for her daughters if something bad should befall Jaime in their custody. Robb assures her that no one sees Jaime without his warrant. Catelyn asks if Robb is afraid to face Jaime in the field again. Edmure sides with Robb, but accidentally refers to him as the boy. Robb roars at Edmure not to call him a boy and declares he can defeat Jaime again if he must. He admits he would have traded Jaime for his father, but looks hurt when Catelyn presses him to say whether the girls are important enough. Catelyn realizes that Robb is doing his best, yet she cannot bear the thought of losing her daughters as well as her husband. Robb promises that if Cersei refuses peace, he will do all he can for his sisters by making her rue the decision. Catelyn can sense Robb is tired of the subject. He asks her to go to the twins to meet Lord Walder Frey's daughters and help choose his future bride. Catelyn sees this as an excuse to send her away for saying things Robb does not want to hear, so she tells Robb he is old enough to choose for himself. Next, Robb urges her to accompany Theon Greyjoy and the Lannisters to Seaguard and return by ship to Winterfell to be with Bran and Rickon. Catelyn insists that until her father dies, her place is at Riverrun. Robb mentions that he could command her to go, but Catelyn counters by asking Robb to reconsider sending Theon as his envoy to Pyke. Robb asks who would be better to negotiate with Lord Balon Greyjoy than his son. Catelyn insists that anyone would be better. Robb argues that Theon fought bravely for them and they have need of his father's longships. Catelyn replies that they will get the ship sooner if Theon remains a hostage. She also insists Balon is not trustworthy and may aspire to wear a crown again himself. Robb declares he will gladly give Balon a crown if it helps defeat the Lannisters. Before Catelyn can reply, Robb walks off and Catelyn can only watch him go, remembering back at Moat Cailin when she urged him to command as he does now. Catelyn asks Edmure to join her in her father's sick room, but he begs off to speak with some new recruits. On her way to the central keep, Catelyn shortcuts through the Godswood, where the leaves still rustle on the trees, ignorant of the white raven that has proclaimed the arrival of autumn. Catelyn is thankful that the weather is holding, since autumn is a fearful time when even the wisest never know if the next harvest will be the last. She finds Lord Hoster Tully sleeping in his solar, made frail by the death growing within him. Beside the bed sits her uncle Sir Brynden the Blackfish. When Catelyn asks if Robb knows of his return, the Blackfish says he did not interrupt the court because Robb will want to hear his news in private first. When her uncle asks about her father, Catelyn confesses that he grows weaker every day, and sometimes his mind is unclear. The Blackfish admits that he always wonders if his brother will be dead upon his return. Catelyn comforts him that at least he made his peace with her father. They sit silently for a long time before Catelyn asks for the Blackfish's tidings. To avoid waking her father, they adjourn to the balcony. Her uncle comments that the red comet is now visible by day and says his men call it the Red Messenger, though he wonders what the message is. Catelyn says the Greyjoy claims it is a red flag of vengeance for her husband, while Edmure claims it is a victory omen. A fish in Tully colors, red against blue. Catelyn only sees the crimson of House Lannister, but her uncle points out that the comet is neither Lannister crimson nor Tully red, but a smear of blood across the sky. Catelyn asks whose blood, but the Blackfish ask if there was ever a war where only one side bled. The Blackfish explains that the war has spread south to the Blackwater Rush and north nearly to the Twins. Mark Piper and Carl Vance have won small victories, and Beric Dondarrion is harassing Lord Tywin's raiders and foragers. Sir Burton Craighall boasted of killing Dondarrion until Dondarrion killed him in an ambush. Catelyn remembers that some of her husband's household guard rode with Dondarrion from King's Landing and blesses their actions. The Blackfish comments that Dondarrion and Thoros of Myr are clever enough to play hit and run, but Robb should never have permitted the River Lords return to their own lands. Janos Bracken was wounded and lost his heir Hendry, reclaiming Stonehenge. Tydos Blackwood is left with only Raventree Hall, and young Lyman Darry was killed by Gregor Clegane less than a fortnight after reclaiming Castle Derry. The Blackfish declares that Clegane's head would make a noble gift for all the people of the realm. Talk of heads remind Catelyn that her husband's remains mounted on spike above the Red Keep. She reminds her uncle that Gregor Clegane is only a servant of Lord Tywin, whom Catelyn believes is the true danger. The Blackfish agrees, noting Tywin's wisdom in sitting safe in Harrenhal and living off their harvests and burning what he does not take. In addition to Clegane, Sir Armory Lorch and a Cahoric sellsword are also abroad, raping, burning, and butchering. Catelyn knows Edmure will rage at the news. She also admits Robb is restless and may listen if Edmure and the Greyjoy will urge him to march on Harrenhal. The Blackfish declares that is exactly what Lord Tywin wishes, and the first rule of war is never give the enemy his wish. Catelyn recalls the tales of the vast fortress of Harrenhal by the waters of the God's Eye. King Harren the Black beggared the Riverlands and the Iron Islands alike to realize his dream of the highest hall and tallest towers in Westeros, but thick walls and high towers proved small use against Aegon the Conqueror's dragons. Harren and all his line perished in the fires that engulfed the fortress. Strong the castle might be, but also cursed, for every house that has held Harrenhal since has come to misfortune. Catelyn decides they must dissuade Robb from fighting at Harrenhal. Her uncle then tells her the worst part. Sir Stafford Lannister is gathering a new host at Casterly Rock, though it will be made of sellswords and new recruits who require training. However, Lord Tywin is in no hurry and will wait patiently for his reinforcements. Then Catelyn gets an idea. If they confront Lord Tywin with a new threat, he might be forced to leave Harrenhal. Her uncle names Lord Renly, but Catelyn insists that they must call him King Renly if they are to ask his help. The Blackfish smiles, but points out that Renly will want something in return. Catelyn replies that he will want what kings always want, homage. Tyrion offers more wine to his dinner guest, Lord Janos Slynt. The butcher's son accepts and asks if the wine is from the arbor. Tyrion replies that the wine is actually an uncommonly rich Dornish vintage. Slynt compliments Tyrion's gifts for words, calling him a lord, but Tyrion points out that Slynt is the true lord and a simple Tyrion will suffice. He notes that Slynt does not sip his wine and is so drunk he dribbles onto his fine clothes. Unlike Slynt, Tyrion has gone easy on the wine but certainly not the food, since one of his first acts at hand was to hire the finest cook in the city. Slynt is very impressed with the food and says perhaps he will hire Tyrion's cook to serve him at Harrenhal. Tyrion quips that wars have been fought over less. Tyrion declares Slynt a bold man to take a grim and allegedly cursed place like Harrenhal as his seat. Slint dismisses the superstition and insists it takes a bold man to rise as he and Tyrion have. Tyrion refills Slint's cup as he asks about Slint's list of proposed successors as commander of the City Watch. Slint opines that he would choose Alar Dîm, whom he describes as a good and loyal man. Tyrion says he is considering Sir Jacelyn Bywater, a distinguished knight whose name does not appear on Slint's list. Slint argues that Bywater is rigid and thinks overmuch of himself and his honor, insisting that Alar Dîm is the one Tyrion wants. Tyrion remarks that Alar Dîm is little loved in the streets, but Slint insists he is feared, which is better. Tyrion brings up that Dîm killed a young whore and her infant daughter. Slint explains that only the child was supposed to die, but the mother got in the way. He says he chose Dîm because Dîm is a hard man who always follows orders and never speaks of it afterward. Tyrion asks who ordered Slint to kill the whore's bastard, but Slint insists he prides himself on being as tight-lipped as Alar Dîm. Tyrion suggests that Jorah Mormont, Lord Commander of the Night's Watch, could use men like Slint and Dîm, but Slint responds that there is small chance of that. Tyrion points out that life takes queer turns, as it did with Eddard Stark, who never imagined he would die on the steps of Baelor Sept. Slint laughs that few did and confirms that even Varys was surprised. Slint also confirms the execution was King Joffrey's decision and seems confused when Tyrion points out Cersei planned to allow Stark to take the Black. Tyrion comments on Slint's new bloody spear sigil and asks if Slint drove the spear into Eddard Stark's back himself or if he only gave the command. Angered, Slint insists Stark was a traitor who tried to buy him. Tyrion replies, little dreaming that you had already been sold. Slint declares that he will not have his honor questioned, but Tyrion retorts that Slint has no honor, though he does admit a spear thrust in the back is a good bargain for a lordship and a castle. Slint rises and demands what right Tyrion has to chastise him. Tyrion points out that Slint knows exactly who he is and should thank the gods he does not have to deal with Lord Tywin instead. Tyrion declares Slint's two younger sons will become squires and the eldest will inherit his title and sufficient lands but not Harrenhal. Then Tyrion explains that the Carrack Summer's Dream will take Slint to the Wall, where he is to join the Night's Watch and give Tyrion's regards to Lord Commander Mormont. Enraged, Slint declares he has powerful friends like King Joffrey, Littlefinger, and Queen Cersei. Perhaps Tyrion will be the one banished to the Wall. As Slint throws open the door to leave, he comes face to face with Sir Jacelyn Bywater, whom Tyrion introduces as the new commander of the City Watch. As 6 gold cloaks usher Slint away, Tyrion hands Slint's list of successors to Bywater and asks him to see they accompany Slint to Eastwatch by the Sea, adding that it would not be taken amiss if Alar Dîm was swept overboard. Soon after, Varys glides into the hall to praise Tyrion's actions. Tyrion comments that he is tempted to do to Varys the same as Dîm. Varys replies that Tyrion might be disappointed. The storms come and go, but he keeps on paddling. Tyrion accuses the eunuch of concealing that Cersei sent gold cloaks to kill King Robert's bastards. Varys asks forgiveness, but Tyrion refuses, angry that he must make a show of punishing the likes of Slint and Dîm while his sister continues on her savage course. Tyrion insists Varys tell him everything he knows from now on, but Varys only says he knows quite a lot. Tyrion points out Varys did not know enough to save the whore and her child. Varys says he took steps to save another bastard, an older boy, but assures Tyrion he never dreamed the baseborn daughter of a whore would be considered a threat. Tyrion remarks that being Robert's was enough of a threat for Cersei. Varys blames himself and comments that the whore loved King Robert. Thinking of Shae and Tysha, Tyrion wonders if a whore can truly love anyone. He recalls that although he provided her with a rich manse and fine gifts, when he said Shae served him best between the sheets, it was not what she wanted to hear. Tyrion remarks that it seems Joffrey is truly to blame for Eddard Stark's death, though Slint and Sir Ilyn Payne carried out the sentence almost as if they expected it. Varys states that Tyrion can prevent further follies with the support of the gold cloaks, but there is still Cersei's household red cloaks to consider. Tyrion responds that they are loyal to Casterly Rock and outnumbered by his Vale Mountain clansmen, not to mention 6,000 gold cloaks if Bywater is the man Varys claims. Tyrion does not trust Varys but cannot deny his usefulness. He asks Varys why he is so helpful, and Varys replies, "You are the hand. I serve the realm, the king, and you." Tyrion asks, "As you served Jon Arryn and Eddard Stark?" But Varys states he served as best he could, and he does not think Tyrion will share the same fate, since power is a curious thing. Varys brings up the riddle he asked Tyrion before. Tyrion says the answer depends on the sellsword, who holds the power of life and death. Varys wonders aloud why men pretend king hold power if this is true. Tyrion points out that kings can call other swordsmen, but Varys only asks why these other swordsmen obey rather than rule. Neither the godly High Septon, nor the lawful Queen Regent, nor the ever-knowledgeable Varys could prevent Eddard Stark's death, so who truly killed him? Joffrey, who gave the command, Sir Ilyn, who swung the sword, or another? When Tyrion asks for the answer to the riddle, Varys declares that power resides where man believes it resides. Tyrion asks if power is just a trick, and Varys agrees it is a shadow on a wall. Those shadows can kill, and often a very small man can cast a very large shadow. Tyrion smiles and declares he is growing fond of Varys, and though he may kill him yet, he thinks he will feel sad about it. Varys declares he will take that as high praise. Tyrion asks what Varys is, but Varys only says he is a loyal servant of the realm. Tyrion presses on to ask who made Varys a eunuch and who he truly is. Varys smiles, never flickers, but his eyes show a different emotion as he insists his tale is long and sad. Varys draws a parchment from his sleeve and reveals the master of the galley, Whiteheart, plans to defect to Lord Stannis. Tyrion sighs that they should make an example of the man, which will serve both to discourage other captains and to keep Joffrey busy. Next, Varys informs him Sir Horace and Sir Hobar Redwine have bribed a guard and plan to escape on the Pentoshi galley Moonrunner. Tyrion instructs Varys to have Bywater send the guard of the Night's Watch and post a guard on the Moonrunner just in case. Next, Varys notes that the clansman Timett killed a man for cheating at tiles. When Varys confirms the man was cheating, Tyrion declares Timett did all honest men a favor. Next, Varys explains that the Red Comet has brought all manner of prophets to the city to preach doom and destruction. Tyrion instructs Varys to let them rant. Finally, Varys states that when Lord Giles Rosby proposed a toast to the king, Sir Balon Swan remarked they would need 3 cups for that, and many laughed. Tyrion insists he's not interested in treasonous table talk, which Varys calls wise. Tyrion returns to his solar to find Bronn waiting. The sellsword asks about Slint, and Tyrion admits he has likely replaced one of Littlefinger's men with one of Varys's. Tyrion asks how the recruiting is going, and Bronn explains that he only hires the sellswords who make a good impression in a duel. Tyrion asks if Bronn has killed any candidates, and Bronn answers, "No one we could have used." Tyrion asks what should happen if one of them kills Bronn, but Bronn only says that man will be the one Tyrion wants to hire. Tyrion asks Bronn if he would kill an infant girl without question when commanded. Bronn replies, "Without question? No. I'd ask how much." Tyrion remarks to himself he does not need Slint or Deem, since he has 100 men of his own. He wants to laugh or cry, but most of all he wants Shay. The road Arya and the others travel is now a little more than 2 ruts through the weeds, and the human flood has slowed to a trickle, so there is no one to say which way they go. However, the road wanders back and forth, tangles with other trails, and sometimes vanishes entirely. Arya hates it. The terrain is gentle enough, but even so the path is narrow enough that the wagons slow their pace to a crawl. A dozen times a day they must stop to free a wheel or double up the teams to climb a muddy slope. Arya constantly looks over her shoulder, wondering when the gold cloaks will catch them. She does not trust their sentries, especially the orphan boys who seem lost out in the woods. Arya can sneak past any of them when she goes off in the night to make water alone. Once she snuck right up to Lamy Greenhands and considered jumping on him, but changed her mind at the thought of Yoren punishing her again. The orphans all treat Gendry like someone special because the queen wants his head. Gendry will have none of it, though. He insists he was only an apprentice armorer until Master Tobomat told him he was to join the Night's Watch. Then he goes off to polish his bull helm, but never wears it. Lamy guesses Gendry is the Wolf Lord's bastard, which angers Arya, who knows Jon Snow is her father's only bastard. She wishes she could ride home alone, but she knows that would mean no one to scout ahead, watch behind, stand guard while she sleeps, and help her fight off the gold cloaks. Yoren decides the King's Road will not be safe until they cross the Trident, so they intend to travel around the west far side of the God's Eye. Settlements and farmland give way to forest and the terrain grows rougher. Their provisions soon run out, so Yoren turns to the poachers, Koss, and Curs to range ahead to hunt, and the younger boys are set to pick berries and plunder orchards along the road. Arya is a skilled climber and a fast picker, and one day she comes across a rabbit which Yoren stews. Everyone else gets a spoonful, but Arya gets a whole leg and shares it with Gendry. At Briarwhite, some field hands force them to pay for the sweet corn they have taken. Yoren gives them some coppers, but complains that brothers of the Night Watch used to be feasted throughout the realm, even by high lords. That night, Yoren is too angry to eat and only paces around the camp, muttering to himself. After that, they find men guarding the fields more and more. The next day, Koss reports a camp of 20 or 30 men in mail and half-helms armed with spears. Some of the men are wounded or dying, and they have only one horse which is lame. The soldiers carry a banner of a spotted tree cat, which Yoren cannot identify. They go wide around the camp, since the men might be desperate enough to take their horses or worse. The detour costs them 2 days at least, but Yoren insists they will spend the rest of their lives at the wall, so there is no rush to get there. One evening, Dauber spies a fire on the northern horizon. As night falls, the fire seems to grow brighter until it looks as if the whole north is ablaze. From time to time they can smell the smoke, but the wind holds steady and the flames never get any closer. By morning, the fire has burned out, but no one has slept very well. It is midday when they come upon the remains of a village. The fields are scorched for miles around and there are burnt bodies everywhere. Leaving the rest to guard the wagons, Yoren takes Murch and Cutjack to investigate the ruined holdfast. When Arya turns to Gendry, he has his helmet on. After a long time, Yoren returns with a little girl and a woman whose right forearm is missing. The girl only cries and the woman only whimpers, "Please," over and over again. Rorge thinks it is funny, and he and Biter laugh until Murch curses them and tells them to shut up. They fix the woman a place in a wagon. Hot Pie murmurs that he is scared, and Arya admits she is too. Hot Pie admits he never actually kicked the boy to death, he just sold his mother's pies. Arya rides as far ahead of the wagons as she dares to get away from the little girl crying and the woman whispering. The one-armed woman dies at evenfall, and Gendry and Cutjack bury her on a hillside beneath a weeping willow. When the wind blows, Arya thinks she can hear the tree's branches whispering, "Please," over and over, which frightens her badly. That night, Yoren orders no fire, so supper is sparse, and Arya fills her belly with water instead. When she wakes, it is pitch black, and her bladder is full to bursting. As she is leaving to make water, Hot Pie is on guard and insists Yoren ordered everyone to stay close. When Arya explains her need, Hot Pie tells her to use a nearby tree and explains that he heard wolves earlier. Rather than fight with him, Arya acts afraid and pretends to go back to sleep until Hot Pie leaves, then sneaks into the woods on the other side of the camp. Just to make sure, she goes out twice as far as usual. As she's doing her business, Arya hears a rustling and sees the eyes shining out from the wood. She grabs her needle and counts the eyes of a whole pack. One wolf comes forward and bares her teeth, but then retreats into the darkness and the wolves leave. She follows the sound of Yoren sharpening his knife back to camp. She climbs into the back of a wagon with him and tells him there are wolves in the woods. Yoren is unperturbed and comments that he thought Arya's kind were fond of wolves. Arya tells him about her direwolf Nymeria and how she was forced to drive her off. Yoren comments that only wolves they have to fear are the humankind, like the ones who burned that village. He wonders aloud if he should have left them all back in the city where it seems safer. Arya insists that she wants to go home. Yoren replies that he has been bringing men to the wall for nearly 30 years and only lost 3, but this time he should have taken a ship. Yoren tells Arya to get some sleep, and she tries, but she can hear the wolves howling, and fainter than that, she hears what might be screams. Davos Seaworth is among the hundreds watching the statues of the Seven burn outside the gates of Dragonstone. His sons Allard and Dale agree that it is an ill thing to burn the gods, but Davos cautions them that this is not the place. The Red Priestess Melisandre walks around the fire, praying in 3 tongues for R'hllor, the Lord of Light, to accept these false gods of the enemy and cast light upon them. The prayer ends with the sacred refrain, "For the night is dark and full of terrors." Queen Selyse echoes the words, but King Stannis only watches impassively. Dragonstone Sept was where Aegon the First Targaryen knelt to pray before he embarked upon his conquest, but that did not save it from the Queen's men. They overturned the altars, pulled down the statues, and smashed the stained glass. Davos recalls that the statues were originally carved from the mast of the ships that carried the first Targaryens from Valyria. Septon Barre could only curse them, but Sir Hubert Ramton and his 3 sons slew 4 men before they were overwhelmed. Afterward, pious Lord Gunsar Sunglass withdrew his support for Stannis and was imprisoned along with the Septon and Sir Hubert's 2 surviving sons. Though he has never been devout, the burning gods make Davos feel ill. Lord Adrian Celtigar coughs from the smoke, and Lord Durham Bar Eamon turns grey, but Lord Manfred Valerian watches Stannis rather than the fire. Davos wonders what Valerian is thinking, but knows such a proud lord will never confide in him. The lords all scorn Davos and his sons, but one day their grandsons will joust together. In time, Davos imagined his sigil will fly as high as theirs, but only if Stannis wins his throne, since everything Davos is he owes to Stannis. It was Stannis who gave Davos his knighthood and his war galley Black Betha. His sons Dale and Allard captained ships of their own. Marek is oars master on the Fury. Mathos serves as Davos's mate. Devon is a royal squire who will one day be a knight, and his 2 youngest sons will one day be knights as well. His wife Maria is mistress of a small keep, and Davos can hunt deer in his own woods. All this he has of Stannis for the price of a few finger joints taken as just punishment for flaunting the law all his life. As he thinks back, Davos touches the pouch around his neck where he keeps his finger bones for luck. They will all need luck soon. Melisandre recounts an ancient prophecy that at the end of a long summer, when the stars bleed and darkness falls over the world, Azor Ahai will be reborn and draw the burning sword Lightbringer from the fire and destroy the darkness. Then she calls upon Azor Ahai to claim his sword, and Stannis marches forward. His squires Devon Seaworth and Brian Faring equip him with padded glove and leather cape. Using the cape to ward off the flames, Stannis plunges into the fire and draws out a near-molten sword from the statue of the mother. Queen Selyse and her queen's men chant praises, and Melisandre names the sword Lightbringer and declares Stannis Azor Ahai come again. The cherry-red sword is burning his glove, so Stannis thrusts it into the dirt. Melisandre calls upon R'hllor to cast light upon them, and Selyse and the queen's men reply that the night is dark and full of terrors. Then Melisandre sings a song in the Asshai language until only Charwood remains of the gods. Impatient, Stannis escorts his queen back into Dragonstone, leaving Lightbringer in the dirt for his squires to collect. Davos notes that the burnt and black and red sword of heroes looks a proper mess. A few lords linger, speaking quietly, but they fall silent when they see Davos looking at them. Davos knows that these lords will put him down if Stannis should fall, but neither will he court the favor of Queen Selyse by giving himself to this new Lord of Light. When the fire starts to dwindle, Melisandre and the squires depart with the sword, and Davos and his sons join the crowd headed for the harbor. Davos comments that Devon did well as the king's squire. Allard asks why the king's squires wore fiery heart sigils in place of the crowned stag. Davos points out that a lord can choose more than one badge. Allard insists that it was an ill thing to burn the seven. Davos asks when Allard grew so devout and what a smuggler's son would know about the gods' doings. Allard insists he is a knight's son and asks why the Lord should remember Davos is a knight if he does not himself. Davos points out that Allard will never be a knight if he meddles in affairs that do not concern him. It is not for them to question their rightful king. His sons did not like to recall they were lowborn, and when they look at House Seaworth's sigil, they see only the black ship and close their eyes to the onion. In the extremely crowded port, Davos enters an inn where he finds the flamboyant Lycian pirate Salladhor Saan eating grapes. A friend and business partner from his smuggling days, it was Davos who recruited Saan to Stannis' cause. When Davos asks why he did not attend the burning, Salladhor explains that such sights are common in Lys. They bore him, and hopefully they will soon bore Stannis. Salladhor explains that one of his trading ships arrived from King's Landing with news that Tyrion Lannister is now overseeing the capital and has driven out Janos Slynt as commander of the City Watch. Davos asks how well the city is defended. Saan replies that the walls are strong, but defended only by the gold cloaks, who are too few and inexperienced. He urges a swift strike to take the city, and then Tyrion could be dressed as fool and Queen Cersei could warm his bed for a night as part of his payment. Davos assures Salladhor he will be paid, but the pirate insists he wants gold, not words. Davos promises there is gold in the treasury at King's Landing, and Stannis is the most honorable man in the Seven Kingdoms. Salladhor again urges an attack on the capital, but Davos asks how long they could hold it with Tywin Lannister and Renly Baratheon against them. Saan reveals Renly has left Highgarden with his army and his new queen to march on King's Landing. That Renly brought his bride along surprises Davos. It suggests either great love or great confidence. Davos declares that Stannis must be told, but Salladhor has already done so, though Stannis seems to disapprove of the pirate. Abruptly, Salladhor claims Stannis' sword is not the true Lightbringer, and asks how a burnt sword will serve Stannis. Davos corrects that it is a burning sword, but Saan insists it is burnt. He recounts the legend of how after 2 failed attempts, Azor Ahai labored 100 days and nights on a hero's blade to oppose darkness. Then he tempered the sword in his wife Nisa's heart, and her blood, soul, courage, and strength went into the steel to create Lightbringer, the red sword of heroes. Salladhor tells Davos to be thankful the sword Stannis raised is not real because too much light can hurt the eyes and fire burns. Salladhor asks when Stannis will sail, and Davos replies that it depends on the will of the king's new god. Salladhor asks who Davos's god is. Cautious of his surroundings, Davos replies that his god is King Stannis, who made him and blessed him with trust. Salladhor says he will remember and excuses himself, declaring they will soon feast in the Red Keep. He also asks Davos to remind Stannis he will owe another 30,000 dragons come the black of the moon, commenting that the statues they burned might have brought a noble price. He jokes that if Stannis grants him Queen Cersei for a night, he shall forgive him. Davos lingers in the inn, thinking of Thoros of Myr and his flaming sword, though there was no true magic in that sword. A true sword of fire would be a wonder, but when he thinks of Nisa, it is his own wife, Maria, he pictures, and he decides the price is more than he cares to pay. After dark, Devon arrives with a summons from King Stannis. When Davos arrives, the important bannermen are leaving. Sir Axel Florent, the foremost of the Queen's men, asks what Davos thought of the burning gods, and explains he saw a vision of the glory awaiting Stannis when they take King's Landing. Davos replies that all he saw was fire and pushes past, wondering why Sir Axel bothered, since Davos is the King's man as much as Axel is the Queen's. Davos finds Stannis seated at the painted table with Maester Pylos. Stannis commands Davos to take a look at his letter. Davos obediently selects a paper before pointing out that he is illiterate. Mildly irritated, Stannis commands Maester Pylos to read the letter instead. All men know me for the true-born son of Steffon Baratheon, Lord of Storm's End, by his lady wife Cassana of House Estermont. I declare upon the honor of my house that my beloved brother Robert, our late king, left no true-born issue of his body, the boy Joffrey, the boy Tommen, and the girl Myrcella, being abominations born of incest between Cersei Lannister and her brother Jaime the Kingslayer. By right of birth and blood, I do this day lay claim to the Iron Throne of the 7 kingdoms of Westeros. Let all true men declare their loyalty, done in the light of the Lord, under the sign and seal of Stannis of House Baratheon, the first of his name, King of the Andals, the Rhoynar, and the First Man, and the Lord of the 7 kingdoms. Stannis orders Pylos to add Sir to Jaime's name, since he is still a knight, and to remove beloved brother, since it is a lie. Then he declares all of their 117 ravens will be used to carry copies across the realm, though most likely they will be burnt by lords who support the other kings, even though Stannis is their rightful king. Therefore, Stannis orders Davos to sail north as far as White Harbor, while his son Dale sails south as far as the Arbor. They are to post the declaration in every port and fishing village they pass for every man who can read. Davos points out that few small folk can read and requests knights to read the declaration aloud. Stannis agrees, since he has 100 knights who would rather read than fight. He plans to send Allard across the narrow sea to carry the declaration to the free cities as well, so that all the world will know of his claim and Cersei's infamy. After Stannis dismisses Pylos, Davos asks what the lords thought of the letter. Stannis snorts that they all flattered him except Valerion, who said Steel would decide the matter, as if Stannis never suspected as much. Stannis curses his lords and asks Davos for the truth. Davos declares the words blunt and strong, but reminds Stannis they still have no firm proof of incest. Stannis replies there is proof of a sort at Storm's End. Robert's acknowledged bastard Edric Storm is the very image of Robert, yet his supposed sons Joffrey and Tommen look nothing like him. Davos reminds Stannis that they cannot reach Edric at Storm's End. Davos also suggests removing the reference to the Lord of Light from the letter in favor of something less specific. When Stannis asks if he has become devout, Davos says he does not know this new god, but knew the ones they burned. Stannis argues that it was only wood they burned, but Davos mentions that charitable symptoms would feed him when he was a begging boy. Davos explains that the people will not love Stannis if he takes away their familiar gods and gives them a foreign one. Stannis replies that the people have never loved him. Gazing out the window, Stannis declares he stopped believing in gods the day he saw the Windproud break up on Shipbreaker Bay, refusing to worship any gods monstrous enough to drown his parents. The High Septon always prattles about justice and goodness flowing from the gods, but Stannis insists all he ever saw of either was made by men. Davos asks why Stannis would trouble with a new god if he does not believe. Stannis answers that God or no god, Melisandre has power. Davos replies that Maester Crescent had wisdom, but Stannis argues that Crescent's wise advice did no good. The Storm Lords laugh when he went begging. Stannis declares there will be no more begging or laughing. The Iron Throne is rightfully his, but of the 4 kings he has the fewest men and the least gold. His only assets are his ships and the Red Woman. Stannis asks if Davos knows that half his men are afraid to even speak her name. A sorceress who can inspire such dread is not to be despised, and he means to find out if she can do more. Stannis recalls that as a boy he nursed an injured ghost hawk named Proudwing, who would follow him about and eat from his hand but would not hunt. Finally, his great uncle Sir Harbert told him rightly that he should try a different bird because he was embarrassing himself. Stannis turned back to Davos and declares that the seven have never brought him so much as a sparrow. It is time he tried another hawk, a red hawk. There is no safe anchorage at Pyke, but Theon Greyjoy insists that the Miriam pass by so he can watch his home rise just as it dwindled when he was taken away as a ward of Eddard Stark. Theon cannot make out the banner above the sea tower, but he knows it is the golden kraken of House Greyjoy. In the sky beyond the castle, the red comet is still visible. Theon decides it is his comet, sliding a hand to the letter from Robb Stark that he considers as good as a crown. The captain's daughter, Theon's lover during the voyage, asks if the castle is as he remembers it. Theon confesses it looks smaller and explains the hard life of the Iron Islanders to her. The girl asks to come ashore with him, but Theon rebuffs her, explaining that the days are gone when the Ironborn could take salt wives they captured on raids. She insists that she could be his salt wife, but Theon says her place is on the Miriam. In the harbor of Lordsport, Theon noticed at least 50 or 60 longships, including those of Houses Goodbrother, Winch, and Harlaw. He cannot see his uncle Euron's silence, but he does spy his father's great kraken. It is obvious the longships are hosting, and Theon wonders if his fathers anticipated his message and called his banners. There is no honor guard to escort Theon, and the waiting merchants are unimpressed when the captain announces him. He orders a horse from an innkeeper who does not recognize his importance. The transaction is interrupted by a priest of the drowned god who says he will escort his nephew. Theon does not recognize the grim bearded priest until he remembers his father writing that his uncle Aeron Greyjoy sank in a storm and turning holy when he washed up. Hurrying after his uncle, Theon finds that the priest's cold manner is totally unlike the amiable man Theon remembers. Abruptly, Aeron asks if Theon prays to the Stark gods now, and Theon, who seldom prays at all, says no. Aeron commands Theon to kneel in the mud. Deciding he may need his uncle's help later, Theon acquiesces. Aeron drenches his head with seawater from a waterskin, reconsecrating him to the drowned god. Aeron informs Theon that his mother now lives in Harlaw because of her health, and her sister Asha has taken Black Wind to Great Wick with a message. Theon asks why his father has assembled his forces, but Aeron insists Balon commanded secrecy. They reach Pyke at sunset, and Theon climbs to the solar where his father waits. Lord Balon is smaller, gaunter, and grayer than Theon remembers him. Balon asks what Theon is now, and Theon replies he is a man and Balon's heir. Balon only says they will see. Balon accuses Theon of dressing like a woman in velvets and silk and asks if the gold chain around his neck was bought with iron or gold. Theon only then remembers that the old way stipulates a warrior may only wear jewelry taken from enemies he has slain. Theon blushes and his father yanks the chain off, declaring that his daughter has taken an axe for a lover and he will not have his son dressed like a whore. Balon decides that Starks have made Theon theirs. The letter fails to impress Balon. He summarizes it as being given a crown for destroying Robb's enemies. Theon attempts to explain, but his father insists that what is meant is what is said, and what is given can be taken away. Balon throws the letter into the fire and backhands Theon when he protests. He declares no man gives him a crown, and he will pay the iron price and take his crown by conquest as Euron Red Hand did 5,000 years ago. Daenerys Targaryen commands her small Khalasar to follow the red comet the Dothraki have named Sharika Kia, the Bleeding Star. The old men mutter that it is a bad omen, but it appeared the night they cremated her husband Khal Drogo and hatched her dragons, so Daenerys considered it the herald of her coming. Her handmaid Doria explains that only the grim and terrible Redlands lie in that direction, but Daenerys really has no choice. The other Khalasars hold sway to the north. the Lazarine to the south, and Khal Pono is driving slaves west to Slaver's Bay. When Daenerys argues that Pono always spoke to her kindly, Ser Jorah Mormont reminds her that Pono was the first to leave and will kill her now. She argues that she has dragons, but Jorah explains that the hatchlings would be easy to kill, though Pono is more likely to seize them since a living dragon is priceless. Daenerys makes it clear that they are hers and will never be taken while she lives, but Jorah insists she will not live long unless she goes where no one else does. Mounted on her silver mare and garbed in her white Hurkar pelt to cover her bald head, Daenerys commands her people to follow the comet, and no words are raised against it. She is the unburnt and mother of dragons, so her word is their law. They ride by night, leaving a trail of dead horses because Pono, Jaqo, and the others have taken the best mounts. Her people are also the weak and unwanted, so Daenerys must project confidence and strength to encourage them. 3 days into the march, the weakest of her people start to die. There is little forage and less water in the Red Waste. When supplies run low, they are forced to live on horseflesh, and the deaths increase. Daenerys suffers with her people. She sheds much weight, and her milk dries up, so she cannot breastfeed her dragons. They will not eat the meat she tries to feed them until she remembers her brother Viserys saying that only men and dragons eat cooked meat. From then on, the dragons devour several times their own weight in seared meat every day and begin to prosper. Each night, Daenerys lets one of the dragons ride on her shoulder, while Arry and Jiqui carry the other two in a cage slung between their horses. One day, Agos says her black dragon is Balerion reborn. Daenerys recalls that her ancestor Aegon the First Targaryen dragons were named after the gods of old Valyria, but decides to name hers after those the gods have taken from her. She names the green and bronze one Rhaegal after her brother Rhaegar Targaryen, the cream and gold one Viserion after her brother Viserys, and the black and scarlet one Drogon after her husband Drogo. Yet even as her dragons prosper, her khalasar withers. Some are forced to walk because there are no longer enough horses to go around. Doria, who has been ill for a while, develops a fever and finally grows too weak to mount her horse. Daenerys stops the khalasar and personally cares for the girl who taught her how to seduce Khal Drogo, holding her hand until she finally dies. As the environment continues to worsen, the Dothraki begin to fear the comet has led them to some hell, and even Daenerys begins to despair. She goes to Ser Jorah to ask if the waste has an end. He assures her it does end, though the way is harder than he dared to think. Daenerys notes that the knight is still suffering from the wound he took from fighting Kotho, but he still urges their only choice is to press on. A few days later, her outriders return with news of a city that even Ser Jorah can tell her nothing about. She sends her blood riders Ago, Jogo, and Rakaro to scout the city. When they report that the city is dead, Jiqui insists that such places are haunted by ghosts and best avoided. This does not dissuade Daenerys, and she leads her khalasar into the deserted city. Inside, Daenerys passes an empty plinth and wonders if its statue now stands in Vaes Dothrak. They find fruit trees and fresh water, but also bones. Arry mutters about ghosts, but Daenerys assures her dragons are more powerful, though food, water, and fodder are more important. After Daenerys settles into her tent and bathes in sand, Ser Jorah arrives to give her a peach, which she savors. She declares that the gods were good to lead them to this place, and Jorah replies that they should rest and gather their strength. Daenerys mentions that her handmaidens worry about ghosts, but the knight points out there are ghosts everywhere. Daenerys remembers those she has lost and asks the name of Ser Jorah's ghost. He names his second wife the beautiful Lynesse Hightower. When Daenerys presses for more information, Jorah explains that his home on the remote Bear Island is cold and rustic. His first wife, a Glover, whom he loved after a fashion, died from her third miscarriage after 10 years of marriage. Soon after, he fought in the Greyjoy rebellion and earned his knighthood when he followed Thoros of Myr through the breach at Pyke. Afterward, King Robert held a tourney outside Lannisport, where Jorah met Lynesse and held Jaime Lannister to a draw in the final joust, earning the champion's laurel and naming Lannister Queen of Love and Beauty. That night, drunk on wine and victory, he asked Lord Leighton Hightower for his daughter's hand, and they were married there in Lannisport. However, Bear Island was a disappointment to Lannister. Jorah went to great expense to import what she wanted, and when that failed, he entered tourney but never distinguished himself again. Each loss cost a suit of armor and a charger, and soon he was broke. Lannister was unwilling to give up her jewels, so Jorah did shameful things for gold. When he heard Eddard Stark was coming to punish him, he fled with his wife to Lys. In half a year their money was gone, and he was forced to become a sellsword. And while he was away fighting, Lannister moved in with the merchant prince Tregar Ormelon. When Daenerys asks, Jorah explains that he hates Lannister more as much as he loves her. As Jorah is leaving, Daenerys asks what Lannister looked like, and Jorah replies that she looked a lot like her. After he leaves, Daenerys realizes Ser Jorah loves her and wants her, not as a queen but as a woman. She tries to imagine herself with him, but it is no good. She also notices his longing to return to Bear Island. He can never have her, but she hopes one day to give him back his home and his honor. That night she dreams of riding dragons with Drogo. The next morning, she calls her blood riders and orders them each to take 3 healthy horses and plenty of supplies to go scouting. Ago to the southwest, Rakaro to the south, and Jogo to the southeast. While they wait for the blood riders to return to the city, which they name Vase Teloro, the Khalasar has a chance to recover, and Daenerys tends to Ser Jorah's hip wound, which finally starts to heal. Rakaro returns first to report the wasteland stretches south all the way to the ocean. Daenerys puts him in charge of pulling up the plaza so more grass might grow for the horses. Ago returns next, having found only 2 deserted cities smaller than Vase Teloro. Daenerys sets him to work repairing the city gates. Jogo is the last to return, much later, bringing 3 queerly garbed strangers from the great city of Karth. The great warlock Pyke, the merchant prince Zaro Zon Daxos of the 13, and Quaithe of the Shadow. They come seeking dragons, and Daenerys declares they have found them. Well, that's it, everyone. Thank you so much for stopping by and watching my video. I hope you enjoyed it. If you have any questions, please leave them down in the comments below. I will be doing a Q&A at the end of the month for the entire book, so please leave your questions down below so that I can compile them if you want them answered. Again, thank you so much for stopping by. Please give it a thumbs up if you liked it, and please subscribe to come back for more. Thanks again. Bye.